So here we have the scribes and Pharisees critiquing Jesus and his disciples. They said, hey, well, John the Baptist's followers, other Pharisees' followers, they fast. How come your followers aren't? Fasting was a very important part of the Jewish spirituality, and so they were sort of kind of scandalized that Jesus' disciples, he's supposedly this great rabbi, and he's having his people not fast, and yet the Torah specifically tells them they're supposed to be fasting. Like, what's going on here? And Jesus, of course, answers with, there's a time for fasting for sure, but there's also a time to celebrate. When you're with the bridegroom, for example, at a wedding, that's a day of celebration. Fasting's not appropriate there, but there will also be times where fasting is appropriate. And I think it's providential that we hear this reading today, because in our church today, the same is true. There is time for fasting and time for feasting. The church fathers will say those who don't fast won't know how to feast, won't appreciate it. But also those who never feast will not truly appreciate the fasts either. That still, 2,000 years later, we are still called to fast, believe it or not. And in fact, today is one of those days. And when I say fast, I don't mean like on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday with the 2 small meals, the 1 normal meal, and no snacking. But that we are supposed to be doing some sort of penance on Fridays. Not just the Fridays in Lent where we abstain from meat, but also on every Friday. Now, on these Fridays, we have the option to replace that abstinence with something else. But fasting is a good spiritual practice that has really been forgotten about in our time, in our society, because we're so used to just indulging in our own desires. But fasting strengthens us. When we fast, we're saying no to something that we want. We're practicing saying no to ourselves. So that when temptation comes about, and it's something else that we desire, but in this case we know that the thing we desire is actually going to hurt us, we're strengthened. Because over here we've practiced saying no. We've developed that habit, that virtue of saying no to ourselves, so that when something evil but attractive presents itself to us, we've practiced saying no to ourselves and proven that we can actually say no to sin and say yes to the Lord. And so today on this Friday, let us ask the Lord for the grace to be able to actually say no to ourselves, to not just indulge in every desire, but to feast when appropriate and to fast when appropriate.